Well, we're back. I haven't seen you guys for a while, so I thought I'd make an appearance. And I've seen a lot of talk on the internet about carburetors, so I thought that would be something good for us to talk about. Uh, there's a lot to go into when it comes to talking about everything to do with a carburetor. They're pretty basic, but yet they're pretty hard to tune if you don't know what you're doing. So, we're going to talk about not one carburetor. We're going to talk about when you have two of them. So, I have to tell you a little story first. This has to do with a friend of mine that had a tunnel ram on a big block Chevy, and it was a out of the box Win or Whittling, however you want to pronounce it, tunnel ram. Not ported, nothing done to it. So he had another intake sitting there at Edelbrock. Big, boxy, nasty looking Edelbrock. And I said to my friend, I said, how come you don't use that intake? Because it just had everything going for as far as like you see on these race cars and big runners and the big open plenum and big crossover. And you know what his answer was to that? He said, it's too big. The car has no low end, it has no sting, and he meant when you hit that throttle, that thing was real responsive. He said with the other intake, it didn't work that well. He said the engine didn't like it. So this was a standard bore 454, and the motor ran extremely well. Matter of fact, I've never seen anything to this day, and this is going back about 30 years. Well, actually, that motor is from the 70s when I first come to know it, back around 1979, 1980, somewhere in there. First time I heard that thing. So that's how long ago that it's been. But anyway, this guy always had the advantage, like over anybody I've ever met all these years. I've met some pretty intelligent people, but this guy here was above average. And it was funny because he always had this scruffy little beard, smoked a half cigar, always had like a cigar in his mouth that was half burnt off. And that's what he was known for. And a lot of people kind of didn't take him serious. You had these shops and stuff, and they would know about him, but they always downplayed him. And yet his car was faster than what they had. And I'm talking about speed shops, automotive shops, the top of the line back in the day. So anyway, getting to the carburetors. I guess give you a little background on that so you'll know I'm not talking about some fly-by-night guy. Everything I've seen him do was always above average, and he never thought anything much about it. He would ask people what they thought and said, well, they got a shop, they must know. I mean, these guys are out there doing this and that. But he'd turn around and listen to what they had to say and even try what they had to say. And every time he turned around and did things his way, the car was faster. How are you going to argue with that? So I said to him one time, I said, why do you bother asking these guys that? He goes, because it's good to know. If I do what they say and then I go faster, that's all the better for me. Because then I learned something by doing what I thought, and I did it the way that they said. So that means that I'm on the right track when I do something. That's a good lesson to go by. So anyway, getting to the carburetors, he decided to go to a tunnel ram, and he went with the Whittling tunnel ram, like I said, and he found his way of tuning that. And a few people come up to him and they told him, and these are, like I said, these are guys that know, that were fast, that had shops. They come in the shop and they said, how come you're using two 650s on that? Why don't you put the center squirters on? You'll pick up ET using the center squirters. So, what's he do? He said, well, them guys know, so I'm going to try it. And I couldn't believe it that he would spend the money for center squirt carburetors just to try something because he respected what these guys said. But it was a learning experience. And you know what he said? Well, if I don't like them, I'll sell them. He goes, that's his outlook on it. So he puts the center squirters on. Now keep in mind, he knew what he was doing. He's not one of these guys that can't get something right. So they were tuned in, and he had an ear on him like you wouldn't believe. He'd say, "Do you hear that? That doesn't sound right to me." I had a pretty good ear too. I'd say, "Not really." You don't hear that? You don't hear that little ticking? Or so that's the ear he had. He tuned, bah, bah. That don't sound quite as responsive as it did. I got it. I got to see what's going on here. Yeah, I found out how to weak valve spring, things like that. This is, you were talking about a guy like this. So he put the center squirters on. Of course, he tried it at the track and everything. Did not like them. He said the car was not as responsive. He said the car was flat. He didn't like how they were mid-range. He didn't like how they were up the top. He didn't like anything about them from what I remember. Now keep in mind, we're going back all these years ago. So when I tell you guys stuff, I try to tell you how I remember it, and I hope I'm telling you exactly to the point of what he said and how it was. So maybe you could take half of what I say here and, don't take it right to the point. Except for when I tell you the times and things like that. So anyway, he put two 650 Hollies on there, which he modified himself. Put the whole tuning on the carbs that he thought would work, with the squirters he thought would work well, with the jet extensions, anything he thought that thing needed, the carburetor got. So they were not stock 650s, but they were 650s. They weren't done up anything fancy, just good tuning. That's all. Anything the thing needed, like with the squirter being a certain size, and jet extensions, like I said, things like that. There was no tricks done to the metering plates that I remember. So outside of that, they were standard 650 carburetors. And all he had done was taken the choke out of the choke tower and got rid of that. But he left the choke towers in there. And I said to him one day, I said, "How come you have the choke towers on them? How come you're not milling them off?" He goes, "What?" He goes, why would I do that?" And I said, "Well, all your race carburetors and stuff are done like that." He goes, "That's helping that." He goes, "That gives me a better signal leaving them choke towers on that carburetor." He goes, "That's a mistake these guys all do, in my opinion." Now, you could say, "Well, I know somebody that has that done, and the cars run great." I've seen where guys pick up by doing that. Well, in his opinion, he didn't want it, and he didn't want to hear about it. So here's another thing that people told him. They heard how responsive that thing was, and they're like, "You should put two Dominators on that thing." Now, keep in mind, this is a standard bore 454. And he goes, "Why would I want to do that?" "Oh, because that motor's the way that thing sounds. That thing could really use some Dominators on it. Bigger's not better." So things calmed down. People he's talking to leave. And I said to him, I was like, "Why do they always tell you to put bigger carburetors and stuff on when you're going faster than they are? These guys don't even have what you have as far as a time slip close to what you run. And you got these guys all telling you what to do." He said, "That's just how it goes. Everybody has their opinions." He says, they try to help, and they just give me their opinion. And he goes, "But the way I have them carburetors set up and this combination," he goes, "I know for a fact that that's not going to work." He goes, "So I'm not going to bother even trying that." Because like I said, he would try things. But he said he knew for a fact that them Dominators would not help that car. And it was on the heavy side, this vehicle at the time. So it's one of them deals where weight factors come in. when it comes to things like this, but I don't want to get into that because it'll throw me off of what I'm talking about here. What I'm mainly talking about here is that you have guys trying to tell him. I think the center squirters were two 660s too, come to think about it. So it wasn't equal as far as the 650s go. It was a two 660 center squirters, I believe, if I remember right. So, getting back to what I'm saying here, I lost my train of thought, of course I would. It's like this here. Bigger is always better. So, he could have spent a lot of time and effort to get this engine to run with a bigger carburetor, and it could have ran fine. It could have ran like a good number. So what if he went out there and ran a decent number and thought, well, that thing needs some carburetors. It needs an 850, two 850s or two Dominators on it. And because it still ran like a decent number. And people would say, oh yeah, see that? Them big carburetors, everything you see fast has them big Dominators and stuff on it. But here's my question. How do you know that the car wouldn't be faster with two smaller carburetors on it? The engine has to call for a certain amount of air. And if the heads are not up to par, and you have too many CFMs going to them heads, it's not going to help you make any power. So, like I said, I don't want to get into reversions and all this stuff. I'm trying to keep this on a what size carburetor and things like that. And here's another thing I want to say. You see a lot of guys, they'll be playing with their carburetors, doing fancy things to them, thinking that they're setting the world on fire, changing the bowl area in them, around the Venturis and things like that, where the carburetor goes in, pulling the air through. All that stuff there, if you don't know what you're doing, leave it alone. If you're watching somebody on YouTube that's doing all kinds of fancy stuff, doing things like off the wall, and you're like, well, maybe that looks cool, maybe I'll try that. If they don't have something to back that up, and I'm not talking about a flow bench or something like that, I'm talking about a running vehicle that runs pretty fast, and they can't prove what they did works. Don't let anybody snowball you. I see more of that on YouTube than anything else. When I find somebody on YouTube that really knows what they're doing and what they're talking about, I feel relieved. I'm like, there's a guy there, and I know two of them. But that's about it. I mean, there's other people out there that I might not come across and that do good things. You guys know who they are and who they're not. But I will say this, like I just told you, if they're not backing up what they say with a number, you know, like I said, a race car number, if they have a 16-second car, why are you going to listen to a guy doing stuff to a carburetor that's second-guessing himself? Okay? That's number one. If the guy's not sure about what he's telling you about, and if he pretends to know and he has nothing to back it up, don't listen to it. That's all I can tell you. So here's the number this car ran. Now this might impress you. And out of the 30 years or 40 years I've seen vehicles run, and I've seen a lot of them, to this day, this vehicle impressed me more than anything I ever heard run. So I've heard some big motors, 800 cubic inch engines, 600 cubic inch, 500 cubic inch engines, top-notch stuff. Now I'm comparing the top-notch stuff of today compared to back then, 30 years ago. So the heads are better, intakes are better, the line of sight is better, the degrees of the heads are better. So why wouldn't I hear something that would make this motor not sound as good compared to something up to today's standards? I'll tell you why. Because it was tuned right. I know it sounds off the wall to say, Terry, if that was a stock Tonneram with no work done to it and things like that, how good could it run? He didn't even port max it. But he said it was close enough. He said he liked how it was going into the heads as it was. He said that's good enough. Well, here's the number that car ran, and it would still run pretty well today. That car went 770s in the quarter mile at 170 mile per hour. It had a 700 lift cam in it, two 650s like I just said, wing and tunnel ram out of the box, and a standard bore 454. Now, of course, this whole car had the same guy working on it, so he picked the converter. He picked everything up for that. The camshaft, which he had another cam laying around, and he said that cam was not up to par either. It was bigger than the one he had in the motor. And everybody said, "We ought to put a bigger cam in that thing." He said the cam might have worked better with a bigger motor. But he said as far as that 454 went, that cam was better than the other cam that was up on the shelf. So, bigger is not better. He could have listened to them guys, put the bigger cam in it, put the bigger carburetors on it, and still ran, who knows, 850s. And everybody said, that car runs fast. That car goes 850s. Yeah, he's got that 780 lift cam in there, 760 lift cam. He's got them two 850s on it. So see, you never know how much better something can run. So out of everything I've said here, that's another point that you guys can take and run with. Just because somebody runs great doesn't mean that the car can't run better. I think there's always a 10th hidden somewhere. No matter what you have, you can think you have the perfect combination, and it is all about combination too. Well, I'll tell you something else. If somebody else had that combination that he had, I've seen this firsthand. With the converter he had in that, most guys would have had a converter in there that probably would have been 2 or 3 times slower at that time. They do a better job with the converters today than they did back then. That was a shaky ground thing back in that time period. So anyway, I thought I'd do this video. Maybe this will help somebody a little bit here and there to guide you in the right direction. Who to listen to, who not to listen to. I know who to tell you to listen to, but I don't know if people want me putting their names out there. But you know who not to listen to if they don't have something to back it up. Don't fall for the smoke and mirrors stuff. And of course, when you hear stories like I'm telling you, keep in mind, you believe everything I tell you probably, because I have no reason to lie to you. But there are guys on YouTube that like to just tell stories. So I can tell you this. This is documented, what I'm telling you right here about this car. I have pictures of it. And anybody that knows me from back in them years I'm talking about would back up what I'm telling you with this whole thing. So I have a way to back up what I say when I tell you guys stuff, and it's never about trying to make somebody look superior. When I tell you stories like this, it's about trying to give you guys something to listen to and to maybe put you on the right direction, and let you make up your mind who to watch, who not to watch, and who to listen to, and who not to listen to. So before you go getting your carburetor out and you're seeing some guy on YouTube finagling with it and putting his bright ideas out there and doing all these fancy things to it, and you think, I gotta try that with my carburetor. If you don't know that works, if you don't listen to anything else I said here, listen to this. Don't do it. It's better left alone than to make it worse. So if you know tricks of the trade and know how to modify your little things in the carburetor, that's a good thing. That means you don't need to listen to other people anyway, most likely. I'm always so afraid when I see these guys messing with things on YouTube, and you have some guy that's just learning, and they hear somebody talk, they'll think, that guy seems like that's pretty cool what he's doing. I'm gonna try that. Well, you try it after you see it on somebody's vehicle and watch that thing rip. You know, getting back to this engine I was telling you about with the tunnel ram, my friend, that thing had so much sting. You'd have to hear it. The thrust of that thing, it would just instant. With the tunnel ram, with them carburetors, where he had that thing tuned with, bah! It didn't rev up like, blah, blah, like you guys hear some of these big cube motors even. That thing was spontaneous. Bah, bah. And I mean the 7,000 RPMs. How many big blocks do this? You like my imitation? It sounded a lot better than that. But anyway, guys, I hope this helps you out. If there's any questions about this, I'll answer it best I can. Like I said, I'm going back years here. But like I said, this is a guy I really looked up to, and he proved everything by what he did, not by what he said. He backed it up with a running vehicle. So with that, I want to say thanks for watching. I have some things come up here in the near future, and a little behind with things. It's been a little bit tough getting over to my son's garage, as you know, but we're getting things done. Adam's getting some things done on the 55 with the small block. If you guys don't know, go over to his channel, Adam Grover, Grover Boys Racing. Jump over there. He's doing the small block Chevy engine now, for you guys that don't know that. So you might get a kick out of watching this come together. I hope everything goes good with this, because he's trying very hard. So with that, I want to say God bless you guys, and thanks for tuning in. Take care.